me always mentally is like interbeing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not just, we're not in the singular mode or what I've called like object oriented thinking
Sure.
versus relationship oriented thinking.
Sure.
Relationship is about the in between,
Mm-hmm.
the back and forth, the feedback
Mm-hmm.
loops. I do something, what effect does it have on you?
Mm-hmm.
Cause and effect, you know,
Yeah.
that effect in turn creates some kind of energetics that comes back on me, so on and so forth, gets
Right.
compounded,
Right.
right? So with horses, if we're going to dare talk about them as like a medium of relational experimentation, not
Mm-hmm.
to you make them a utility thing, but
Mm-hmm.
like this is one of the joys of working with them is this type of experimentation. They give very immediate feedback
Mm-hmm.
on energy,
Yeah.
right? On how you present to them,
Mm-hmm.
what you bring to them. So they're I would even liken it to like a clay sculptor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever seen some of these videos that go around virally. They're the kind that kind of entrance me of someone just working on
Yeah. On the wheel.
the wheel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're watching the object like morph and change
Mm-hmm.
in this like liquid form. So horses in like the mammalian world, you know, I've never worked with a gazelle. They'd probably be even more electric. But in the mammalian world, like this is like wow, the
Mm-hmm.
way we can observe those feedback loops. So that's the first thing I want to say is like
Yeah.
there's this very fluid energetics to horses versus let's like compare that to the human world. And and I will get to this idea of consent and
Yeah.
sovereignty, but I'm kind of setting up first the idea that the moment we even think about consent and relationships,
Mm-hmm.
we want to be aware of these feedback loops,
Yeah.
these back and forth, question
Absolutely.
and answer. Can I? Yes, you can. Can I? No, you can't. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
no, I can't. Now what? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, oh, so in the human world, that kind of feedback loop gets a little more viscous, right? It's a little bit heavier because
Mm-hmm.
it's complicated. Now,
Mm-hmm.
why is it more complicated? In a very simple sense, we could say language,
Yeah.
right? Language makes it more complicated, but also our language, there's some, I don't want to say dishonesty that happens at the level of language, but sometimes what we might be thinking and languaging through our human conditioning has divorced us from the feelings.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon for there to be
Yeah.
incongruence between the thought and the word and the body and the
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
sensations. So to even like scale up what I'm talking about, this pure energetics with the horses, and then taking some of those lessons and trying to apply them to the human world, immediately there are some obstructions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they take place very simply. I mean, there's more than just language, but that's one location, and of course, thought forms where we might kind of be aware that things get complicated.
Yeah.
So, what's some of the solution to that? Well, like, fortunately, some of the solution, we're already peeking into it as trauma informed
Mm-hmm.
practitioners because, you know, what is some of the best trauma informed frameworks telling us,
Mm-hmm.
if we didn't already know this from our mystical lessons in nature, is we need to get into the body.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's the somatics
Mm-hmm.
of how we're experiencing life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, to speak more directly to this idea of consent, I think that's the first thing we want to be aware of
Mm-hmm.
is that if we were to do a poll right now, just of like the average person and what's your idea of consent, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's usually a linguistic utterance.
Yeah.
And that linguistic utterance is yes or no.
Right.
Do I give consent in the affirmative or do I not?
Right.
And it's like in the moment of that declaration, there's even like a legal pronunciation
Yeah.
being made.
Yeah.
And so we're already so locked into these heavy things, this hard yes,
Mm-hmm.
legal implications, no, legal implications, cultural implications, political
Right.
implications, heavy, heavy, heavy
Yeah.
in terms of the comparison to the energetic feedback
Exactly.
of horse.
Exactly.
So I guess to begin by complicating, when we talk about consent, complicating that a yes or a no aren't that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And that even if they were very clearly uttered
Mhm.
at the level of language, there's a time component.
Mhm.
How long is that yes valid?
Yeah.
By the time it's locked in as law, you sign your signature on a waiver or on a contract, your yes is now solidified.
Right.
And we'll come back and remind you of that if you change your mind.
Right.
And it's like, what about when our own yeses and nos are not congruent with how we change through time?
Yeah.